Yeah, the hard thing about the focus on what you can control thing is it's not tangible, right? It's not you can control a hell of a lot more than what people like tell you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's funny because you kind of control how much you can control too, right? With
Yeah.
like, your work ethic and the positions you put yourself in. And like, I remember we were in a place where, we wanted to improve college access to kids. So like one of the reasons I started setting up the camps we run at Fremont was because I wanted to be able to better control our kids getting recruited, right? So one of the ways I'd pick who I was going to reach out to be clinicians was I'd look at the academic profile of our athletes, their competition background, what level they should be at, what schools, like, what's their top three schools, what they want to study, what's the best fit. And I'd reach out to that coach and go, hey, we're running a camp this summer. We'd really like you to come out and be a clinician. And I'd develop a personal relationship with them. All of a sudden, our kids are going to college to wrestle. And I'm like, dude, like, lots and lots of people would have been like, "Oh, you have no control over that." Right? I'm like, I figured
Yeah.
out a way to do. I'm not saying I controlled it, but I sure as hell made an impact on, things that a lot of people would have deemed not my job and not something I could impact. So
Well, so I think to your point, right? It's like you're not going to make it, well, because that coach is now a clinician, that means your kid's going to go to that school. You can't control that, but you can increase the probability. You know what I mean? It's like
exactly.
I can't control what our kids are eating at home, right? And why they come in so heavy for practice on Monday. But I can do my due diligence and try to give as much information to parents as possible. I can make sure they have access to, if they can afford it, a nutritionist. We can do like mental Mondays where we give guys information so where they can be, oh, hey, we've given you the information. It's on you to be accountable. We can check all of our boxes that way and maybe increases the probability that they're going to do the right things and not come in heavy on Monday. Like all of those things I think about, and this is where, I have to kind of check myself. There are so many things that my mind, I feel like, is just, I'm always thinking about those things. And like, I have like a long list of stuff that I don't know, it just hit me during my prep period. And I just spent an hour just typing it out, all the things that I think I can control and what we already do. And then what it takes for us to jump levels to an elite program and stuff like the nutrition, stuff like feeder programs with clubs and trying to get middle school and elementary wrestling, stuff with our strength and conditioning stuff, like all of it, fundraising, all of it. And I think about, how do we execute it then? And what's our path from where we're at? And I think about like this, there's only one of me. And if I want to change something, I have to get other people on board with the vision, because what's going to end up happening if I don't, then and I don't see it get done, either I'm going to do it myself or I'm just going to be really frustrated and probably, unhappy. And if I do it myself, there's cost for other things. Like I'm not going to have as much time to spend on the podcast, not going to spend as much time with my fiance. We're not going to be able to, do all those other things. So it's just trying to figure that stuff out and trying not to lose my head.
Well, and when you start going down that road too, figuring out how to be more efficient plays a huge role in it, right? Like I remember, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, I started looking at how much time I was spending doing like logistical things that mattered and were important and made the pieces of the puzzle I have it on my program, right, with the coaches I have, you know, um, it figuring out how to make them just get to focus on wrestling, right? Like, I'm lucky right now with what we have at Fremont. I mean, I've always been lucky with Deuce, right? Like, I've never had to worry about the technical aspects of the sport, right? I always want to learn. That's why I love wrestling. I was always like wanted to learn the new move or the new thing or get better and advance my knowledge of the technical aspects. And then when I got back to Fremont and Deuce was here, I was like, oh, dude, like this guy's forgotten more wrestling than I'll ever know. Like I don't have to search it out anymore. And I've been very lucky in that regard. Like that was, what ended up at Davis with Munoz and Sanchez and Zaleski and those guys. And I was the administrator for a year there, and then went down and started working Munoz's camps, and then ended up back at Harbor. I think I was at Harbor '06 and then '08, '09. And that was right before you got there, right? And
Yeah.
then that year at Harbor, I realized very quickly, right after coming back from Davis, like, I don't know enough wrestling. Like, I could get a kid to state, but putting kids on the podium was going to be really hard for me. Because you were talking about like people having unfinished competition careers, dude. I don't have a competition career. Uh, I was a varsity high school wrestler, right? Like, I have no business, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, there's
when I,
always a
when I,
bell curve. You know what I mean? There's always a bell curve.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, I I wore that, right? Like, I went back to Harbor and I had some kids that were good, and I got a couple of them to state, and it hit me. I looked around state and I listened to everybody else, and I was like, dude, these guys just know more than me. And Bobby Soto, right? I had Bobby and those guys from Fremont when my senior year, Bobby took over and he came up from Cal State, right? And he knows his stuff. So I knew what good coaching was, and I knew what good technique was, but I also knew that the gap between me being able to apply it on a daily basis, um, and where I was I had to fill that gap, right? And that challenge was great for me. That was the competitive part of me, was like, can I catch these guys who were D1 guys for 5 years, right? How am I going to bring something different to the table, knowledge wise, without having that experience? And ultimately, like, I became the piece to the puzzle rather than the focal point. So I've always kind of been like a secondary piece. So that secondary piece just grew and grew and grew. All right, now how are we going to fund the Like you mentioned some of these things. How are we going to fund the program? How are we going to be more efficient with the way we're teaching? How are we going to not burn them out? How can we get an extra workout in without breaking down their bodies? Like, who's got knowledge we want to learn from? Are we going to bring that person in? Like, how's the system function? Lots of coaches don't even understand how the system functions, right? Like, running tournaments is great because I have coaches come up and ask me questions, and I'm like, dude, you don't know shit. Like, it's crazy. Like, it's crazy some of the stuff they ask me. Dude, the greatest thing happened this year. I was running mid-cows, and I was sitting there with the mom that helps me out. Her name's Dana. She's great. And Tuttle, Oklahoma was out. And this kid from Tuttle, it's Friday night or whatever, going from day one to day two. And the check scale's right next to the head table. So he's checking his weight, right? Little teeny kid, 106, 113. So he's checking his weight. And I must have got 5 or 6, coaches and parents coming up one after another asking questions. And I didn't even think about it, right? I'm just answering, trying to be nice, not to, because you can be a big dick running tournaments, and I am sometimes, but I try my best to be as nice as possible because it's a bad look for parents. It's really easy for parents to let their kids quit this sport. So I
Yeah.
try my best not to give them a reason. So I answer all these questions, Dana and I, right? And this kid turns and he goes, man. And he's got a real like heavy Oklahoma drawl too, which made it even better because he's this little like Mighty Mouse looking kid. He goes, man, is your guys' job just to answer stupid questions all day? And I was busting up. I was just laughing so hard. I was like, yeah, kind of, kid, kind of, because
God.
those guys. It was. And he said it loud enough that like the last person probably heard him as he's walking away, and I'm like, it was just so funny. And I was like, yeah, kind of, kid. Someone's got to teach people like what's going on. But it blows my mind how many coaches don't like take the time to understand how systems function, because those systems impact the kids and impact their opportunities and their development and their ability to go to the next level, right? Like, whether it be how to qualify for Fargo or whatever it is. Like, there's a million systems that all interact, especially the high school season. Jesus Christ, printing out weigh-in sheets is insane. The complicated nature of that's insane. And there's guys who ask me, November 30th how to do it, and then the same guys ask me at league finals. And I'm like, Come on, bro. If you're modeling behavior to kids and learning and wanting them to grow and develop, you need to do it too. You know, whether it be wrestling or learning how to operate a stupid computer system that makes zero freaking sense.